So, welcome everybody to the panel Blackout. My name is Susa Pop. I'm, from Public Art Lab, urban media curator and founder of Public Art Lab and initiator of the Connecting Cities network. So I'm very happy today to have some partners from the Connecting Cities network with us to this panel Blackout. Here are also the names. If we switch onto my computer, then I start to present them. Exactly. Okay. So let's start with Marília Pasculli. Marília Pasculli is from Verve Cultural in São Paulo, and she is initiator together with João Frugile from a very huge media facade there at the Avenida Paulista. So she will let us know more about her activities in São Paulo. Then I would like to introduce you to Martin Brynskov, who is associate professor from University of Aarhus. Martin, he will moderate this panel after a short introduction into the Connecting Cities network. Alain Mongeau, founder and artistic director of MUTEC Festival from Montreal. I think you have also an anniversary this year. How much is it? 15th anniversary. We have among us Paul Sermon, who is an artist, famous for his, lots of his telepresent projects like Picnic on the Screen. He's from Manchester. Then Mike Stubbs from FACT in Liverpool, and Yves Bernard from IMAL in Brussels. Yes, so I'm very happy that you are all here, and I hope you can read the names. So just let me give you a short introduction about this Connecting Cities network. Connecting Cities is I would say an artistic research project that is supported by the European Union for 4 years. It started in 2012 and is running until 2016. And so what are we doing? Our main goal is to investigate on this whole how can I say, urban screens, urban media facades infrastructure, about the socio-cultural potential of this medium, as well as the intercultural, translocal context. Each year we are co-curating art projects and co-producing them and circulate them on these networked infrastructure. So here you have a kind of overview. It's a growing network, and we started with 10 European cities, and Montreal as an associated partner. And now we are very happy that also São Paulo is a partner, and that is growing. A couple of words about Public Art Lab. I founded Public Art Lab in 2003. We are mainly producing urban media art projects and, with technologies. Most of them have a very participatory character, so our goal is to create a certain awareness in the public space and to include the public audience into creative processes. We did a lot of mobile projects in 2006, 2004, like mobile studios, mobile museums. And then in 2008, we started to focus on this whole topic of media facades and urban screens, together with Miriam Struppek from Interaction Field. We did the Media Facades festivals together, Berlin 2008 and the Networked One Europe 2010. And yes, so what else? I'm proud to say that I'm a jury member of the Media Architecture Biennial, what Martin Brynskov is chairing, so he will let us know more about the Media Architecture Biennial in Aarhus this year in 2014. Yes, our panel, we called it Blackout because we thought it is a good start. You know, this word blackout, what does it mean? Power blackout, media blackout always means if there is a catastrophe, then first of all, of course, to save energy, they shut down media facades and urban screens. And it's an interesting point in this afterglow context to think about if they are shut down, if they get black, the moment afterwards, what does it look like if we start from this point 0 to think about media facades, urban screens, when they lost, when the memory is erased. To this discussion, I want to invite you today. And so some inspirational images before. This is an interesting image what circulated in the last weeks with this title, "Smog in Beijing is so awful that you have to catch the sunrise on big screen." And then afterwards it turned out that that is not an artistic scenario that they show the sunrise now on big screens and the people are standing there because of air pollution, but that it is that it was a media, yes, let's say mistake, a big mistake, or a kind of campaign to use this visual. The photographer took this image as a part of a touristic advertisement where it was just shown, I think, for 8 or 10 seconds, and so they had really to correct these media statements, and so no Beijing residents are not watching fake sunrises on giant TVs because of pollution. So that was very interesting. But anyway, when we have seen this picture for the first time, we thought somehow this fits very well in this afterglow discussion. This is also the reason why I'm showing it today. And because not all media facades are an example like this one, zero energy media facade, which is equipped with photovoltaic elements and produces its energy itself and even produces twice as much energy as it needs for the illumination in the night. And another interesting example, of course, is also rare examples is this big media facade, which was installed in Hamburg during the Internationale Bauausstellung IBA 2013, and it has integrated bioreactors with chlorella, and so also produces heat through photosynthesis. So these are very few examples, I think. Most of them are used for advertisement, brand, corporate identity, or big events. They are often installed during big events and few community platforms. So in the moment we are mainly working with community platforms and had a lot of experience in the last years. So this is a visual, yes, what I still like very much because it describes this urban media environment. On one hand, of course, media facades are operated through the internet and equipped with internet technologies, but on the other hand, there are also these interface technologies, yes, lots of them, sensor technologies, motion tracking, and so on. I will also show you a couple of them. And in contrast to, to smartphones, this is also a picture what was, I think, very often circulating. If you see here, this big difference, this was when the Pope was selected and gave his speech. So you see here in 2013 how many people use mobile phones and smartphones. And comparing to 7 billion world population today, there are already 5.9 subscribed contracts, 5.9 billion contracts. So yeah, everybody is online. And but in contrast to mobile phones, of course, what is interesting for us is to use these media facades as kind of shared encounters, as platforms where the people meet and ask for the socio-cultural potential of these media facades. So I already mentioned we meanwhile produced over, I think, 90 projects together with our partner consortium and had often a very playful approach. Here you see the SMS slingshot that was produced in 2010 and was meanwhile on World Tour, where you could send SMS messages to the media facade. Then also, of course, lots of projects are realized through motion tracking cameras. This famous project of Chris O'Shea, Hand from Above, which was adapted during the Media Facades Festival 2010 in Brussels. And other motion tracking projects, public gamings, which we have been realized. But also interesting interfaces like breathing belts that have been used in exchange as an interface with this media facade, or EEG helmets, installations. So internet-generated projects. This is maybe also a quite famous one of Julius von Bismarck and his team, the Smiley at the mood gasometer, where they asked the people how they feel and took a photo, and then the most dominating emotion was sent via live stream to this gasometer in Berlin, and was visualized through this animated smiley. Other internet-generated data visualizations are City Sleeplight from Antoine Schmidt, which was curated by Imal in Brussels, and also was shown now very often. Antoine Schmidt, he used open source information and of traffic, illumination during the night, bank transaction, and out of this he created this pulsing light, which he projected back to the public space. So in general, we found out there are at least three potentials in this whole debate and investigations of media facades: community building, connecting cities, and sensing cities. And we thought it's interesting to go deeper into these topics. So we founded this European Urban Media Network for Connecting Cities, what I shortly mentioned before, supported by the European Union. And also here you see the partner network. And starting from these potentials, we developed these 3 city visions. So each year we are having a certain topic. In 2013 it was the networked city. Now we have participatory city and visible city. And I'm just shortly introduce you to some of the projects of this networked city. Here it was how can I say, the challenge to translocally connect the public audience of several places, and there were really different approaches. Here you see an overview of the artist projects which we realized together. And one project which was shown in nearly every city was Binoculars by Mark Canet and Varvara Gulyayeva. Yes, it's a kind of association of a panorama camera where you are looking through and you did not see your own city, but you have been looking to other cities. And while you have been watching other places, your eye was tracked and was projected at these places. So the people who were there suddenly saw that they, that they were observed and started to interact with these, with this eye. And this was presented in the cities, what you will find here below, and was one example, a very good showcase for this networked city scenario. Here you see some other. It was in another context. Then United Descent of Colors. This was also an interesting project. It was, like a kind of inquiry for the public audience. You could, with an iPad or with your iPhone, you had an you could visit this website, and then there were always questions in different languages. I think it's translated in 16 languages, socio-political questions, and we have to mention that this project was realized by a team from Istanbul, and who really used it also or developed it after these riots. And each question, what the people then answered, was represented by a color. So at the end you could see the public opinion to certain questions with these colors, like here on this Ars Electronica media facade. Another project, Ready to Cloud, by the Constitute. This was a kind of playful approach where the people could meet in a cloud. So the Constitute wanted to create an ephemeral infrastructure. So they took this cloud, a fog machine, and we had the scenario also in 2 cities. So they jumped into these illuminated circle and were scanned by a Kinect camera, and projected into this cloud where they met this other person from the other city. And Jeremy Bailey, master slave. Jeremy Bailey, he stayed in Toronto when he presented this project in Dessau, what we see here, but sent his slaves, and he was presented through an iPad, which was the face of the slaves, and through these slaves he was then talking to the public audience. And so they were walking to the public audience, talking to them, and was also presented as a network scenario between Brussels and Liverpool. You can see all these projects on our website, and also there are very nice portraits what we produce together with Arte Creative. So here you will find more detailed all the artist projects and portraits. Now, in 2014, we have the topic of this participatory city. There was an open call. And now we met during the transmediale. We had a 2 days artist workshop, and so the curators and the artists met, and we were discussing about the projects. Here you see the selection of the artists, projects and artists, what we are going to produce the coming year, and. We will also have a workshop tomorrow where some of the artists are also here. So if you are interested, please pass by or subscribe. I think you have to register for the workshop, which starts tomorrow at 11, and where we will go much more deeper into this, how can I say, curatorial and artistic practices. Okay, so just what we are also having is a Connecting Cities Lab this year, which is realized by IMAL in Brussels. There will be also a call for participation, and because we are very much interested to use this topic of participatory city to use a more mobile infrastructure, more do-it-yourself infrastructure, and to have a more experimental approach. Maybe you visit our Telepresent gallery. It was at Public Art Lab office, so a buttermilk screen, a rear projection, where we showed different live streams from all over the world and called it Telepresent Gallery. That was very interesting to see in these large scale, to see these surveillance cameras in this large scale format. And I also would like to, this is again the wrong, it's Visible City 2015, which we will, which is the topic of next year, where we will focus on this data visualization of on urban screens. So a very short overview on the partner infrastructure, urban screens networks. On the one hand, yes, these are the commercially run networks. Most of them have no interface, so you get a certain time slot and mainly can show internet-generated projects. Or we also use it to show our trailer. Then we have, on one hand, media facades holders in the network, those who run a permanent infrastructure, like Ars Electronica, Media Lab Prado, FACT Liverpool, Museum of Contemporary Art in Zagreb. Here you see IMAL also with their do-it-yourself media facade in Brussels. Montreal, Quartier des Spectacles and Mutec. Alain will let us know more about it. Also the digital gallery of the CESI building in São Paulo, Federation Square in Melbourne, and temporary infrastructure like Public Art Lab. We are working with different existing infrastructures. Riga with European Capital of Culture 2015 with its pavilion, then Marseille and Istanbul, who participated last year. Helsinki with projections. Yes, so if there are also a lot of projections which we are using, and if because you are more flexible, and which is also a medium which we can use easily. So I already yes, pointed out and invited you to this workshop, and then I would also invite you to follow us on Twitter and on the website and newsletter. So thank you very much for your attention so far. And now I would pass on to Martin Brynskov, who is the moderator of this round. And yes, so.
Thank you, Susa. Yes. Thank you for coming. I was here sort of just before here, and I saw this room, and nobody had shown up. And I was going to, I was getting a little worried. So who would come and talk about, media architecture and Blackout, and what is it? Did we actually have a straight communication plan in all this? But perhaps it's just because it's such a fantastic place anyway, and the NSA are such bastards anyway that, okay, let's go and see what happens here. Anyway, thank you for coming, and thank you, Susa, for the introduction. I will just give you my short view on this Blackout theme, and then I think my main function here will be to try to tie some of these positions together, and hopefully with input and critique from you. Yes, I think it's a hugely important topic. I think we all do, and I think it's really, really difficult to do something, at least on the scale that I needs to be worked on. So we will come back to the media architecture part specifically, but I think this question about not just why did the blackout happen, as you started out saying, but actually who can blackout, who can get blackout, and how do you get a blackout? Is that because, you choose to do something that then collectively creates a blackout? Is it something that someone imposes on you? I think those are much more important questions. It's interesting, you mentioned the project that was also shown in Istanbul, United Colors of Dissent, which was actually quite difficult to produce, I would say, in Istanbul. Because it's not just that the government said, oh yeah, come up and dissent with us. Like, here, we will, support your culture and all. Just please. So I think when we talk about the city and media, this is in fact the important backdrop, that if it is a powerful set of platforms that we have, then immediately they become, you could say, mundane and connected to the overarching issues of these different cities. And to be honest, they are quite different. So I would say many of the projects that we have seen here, and many of the issues that we will be discussing, actually quite quickly needs to be connected to some larger issues. And I think if we don't do this, we're just fooling ourselves, and I think immediately it becomes another discussion. So from my perspectives, I work with cities in the light of, you could say, the interfaces, whether you call them media, whether you call them materials or buildings, or whether you call them technologies. And that is also being labeled as smart cities, which is an awful term, but it's, in some way it works as a, you could say, a lens to connect many discussions. So this is in fact an attempt to chart this phenomenon, which is not, of course, new in any way, and it has had many names in the past. So now it's the smart city, but it has been called a lot of things. But it was easier to work with before. In not so recent, or in a actually quite recent past, we could contain many of these systems either within a geographic area or within a sector. So many of the problems that we're having now, of course, because of the mobile and the net, is that these systems become impossible to differentiate from the city itself. So when we have a city, it makes no sense to talk just about, this smart layers or the digital layers or the technology is abstracted from, the city as a political system or the city as a meeting place for people. And so just to make it short, that's what we're struggling with. We need to get these discussions connected to the cultural and organizational issues. And I think it would be important for me as a frame for this to say that this has very little to do with technology. In fact, it's a discussion about how we want to be together and how we organize and who gets power and so on. So if you want a city where many people can dissent and take part, well, that's what you're going to say. Don't say you want a smart city or a lot of urban media infrastructure or something. Say what you want to do with it, because, of course, that's a political thing. And I think, in fact, apart from some venues, probably like this one, I think most of you got a message if you went online thanking for your cooperation with the NSA. Did you? Okay. I think apart from communities like this, it's a too absent discussion. And so we can critique that. And of course, I'm sorry, the translation says the Nordic spirit versus Google, but you can replace that with whatever. Goldman Sachs is pretty current in Denmark at the moment. Actually, the main problem for me is how do we actually sneak in these discussions in the very large discussions that have so far usually been operating on different terms. And of course, we have all kinds of concepts and strategies. But I think at the moment we need to get a bit more organized and try to find out how can we do this on a sort of larger scale. So I will end with showing you two things that I have personally involved myself in, trying to nudge this discussion in a way. So Smart Aarhus has all the signals of this awful smart cities lingo, but I think in fact it's an interesting and necessary and I think useful way to go. It's to try to connect, you could say, the political developments with some specific organizational infrastructure that is sensible to these discussions. And I think it's really, really difficult, and you can laugh at this all you want, and probably rightfully so, but we need to be quite upfront about the fact that we want to do things in a different way, and not just by efforts that are disconnected from the larger discussion or just taking place in the art world, but actually trying to make a difference somewhere else. And you will see examples of this discussion, I think, from the people that are coming here now. So you can look at the mission or the vision or whatever it's called from Smart Aarhus and say, oh, we want to show the world how to do this our way. And I think actually that is a nicer way of saying things than just saying, oh, we want to save the world and do it much better. I saw the future the other day, by the way. Big Japanese company that actually has the money and influence to shape the future. And I kid you not, they had hoverboards. They didn't have flying cars, but they had hoverboards outside. I mean, bubbles of glass in the air, and robot nannies. And it's like, okay, this is what we're up against. And you think it's a joke, but it's not. So I think actually just trying to get these things working is important. Now the other very concrete strategy is to put up some events to bring people together that not necessarily usually meet and discuss media architecture. And in fact, right now you're part of the launch of MAB 14, which is the Media Architecture Biennale, which will happen again in 14, and we'll actually try to bring people from very different perspectives, very different cities and cultures around the world to discuss, to bring their thoughts, discuss, and go back and bring the common thoughts to their communities. And of course, we invite you to take part in this, and you can see more all over the web. But if you see sort of the image here, it's very much focused on the bling and the tech. But I think we need to take this discussion further and see how can we embed this in the broader political discussions, political in a very broad sense. So this is a city hall tower that is using media architecture to do some things. Yes, if you happen to be part of an initiative in some city, we do invite you to come. Right. So I think we will just go quite quickly through the presentations here. We will invite you to take part, to disagree, and I think we should now just make sure. I don't know if we just throw the mic out there and see if we can give it to those who want to say something. But please, if you have any comments before we take the focus to São Paulo. No. You want to hear what goes down in São Paulo. Okay. So please, introduce yourself, and we'll stop between the presentations and have a quick discussion. So now we will have some concrete views from different perspectives and try to see how this is being done, I would say, around the world. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Hello. As Susa introduced us, we are Culturen. We are responsible for creating the media facade, the first and the biggest in Latin America. I'd like to start with a brief introduction of São Paulo. São Paulo is the sixth biggest city in the world, and the fourth largest agglomeration of population on the planet, with 20 million inhabitants. The city has grown really fast for the last 50 years, and we have, like, as all big city, many pollution problems such as air, water, sound, and visual pollution. In 2007, the City Hall has implemented a very strict law called Clean City that implement the reorganization of the urban landscape for a better visual environment. All publicity was extremely prohibited, and also the brands of the commercial properties have to follow a regulation of area according to the facade. As you can see in this example, before and after the law. In some other points of the city, all billboards were turning down, and it really was very nice. And during 1 year, all these old billboards were there, left alone, and the city was adjusting itself to this new urban scenario. And also the brands has to rethink how they're gonna to transmit the, show themselves in these spaces and how to contact people. In fact, nowadays one way that the brand has appeared in the urban landscape, it's sponsoring green areas, and like this small panel you can see over there. And also there's like cultural merchandising, like Absolute created this vertical garden, And the brand is not allowed to appear, but has a little bit of visual identity. Also, Nokia created a graffiti contest all over the city, and the communication was only through internet. And also, yeah, we created this media facade, only transmitting cultural content. We produced 4 shows during the year. And we choose the location, Avenida Paulista, because it's the biggest avenue in Latin America. It concentrates large numbers of banks, companies, cultural institutions, education institutions, and mostly because there's tons of bus stoppers and stops for public transportation that circulate daily 2 million people. And we are really interested in engage these people that comes from completely different backgrounds and completely different social backgrounds together through media art. We implement the clusters, the pixels, and manually handle in this huge area of 3,700 meters square. And pixel by pixel, we create this huge media facade. We invite artists to create projects using sensors of movements. Also, we implement temporary interfaces. We usually invite, discuss with the artists to do some projects considering the location. Like this project was like a game based in Space Invaders, but it was a bike and killing cars. So discussing the conflict between the people and the bikes in this large avenue, and the game really works. There have to be 2 people playing at the same time. We also worked with data visualization. That was a project by Mark Canet and Vavra Gulaneva. That was a metronome showing the rhythm of the city. We did also another very nice data visualization project by Nerea Calvillo that was showing how it's the quality of air in different areas of the city in real time. And our last show was the SP Urban Digital Festival in November last year. The shows, oh, sorry. Well, maybe like that. The thematic was the digital citizen, how we behave in this digital culture and how we imagine ourselves and our human capacity. In this digitalized world, we created a platform. It was produced 10 projects based in this briefing, some adaptations. And that's a little bit what we have been done. Yeah, I don't know, but it's okay. It's a very short video anyway. That was a Brazilian artist with lip motion interface. We invited Julian Opie for an installation. We have several panels in the area. The area used as an interactive area is a very dark pedestrian street, and we think of engage people to rethink this urban space and how it could be safer and actually have some social activity on it. I'm gonna pass faster the video. That was also a nice project by Sergio Galan and Pablo for the skaters have some place. we put microphones and cameras, so everything was tracked. We do a lot of performers, and that was a VJ performer with a band and music, real time. This is a performer called a Brazilian artist. When this strange figure with camera has eye contact with the audience, the image will immediately take it to the facade. So it has to have this personal eye exchange, so to the piece to work. That was a project by a Danish artist. That every second was a new image generated by a system of software, really similar to this Google. Our artists were interviewed by James George, given the view at what's the digital citizen, and then yes, we have performers. Live performance to eventualize our show. That's it.
Thank you. Just a shorthand, otherwise it gets so... Thank you. So, to me, São Paulo was the first and most famous example of a very political decision, so banning public media or urban media in this way. How's the situation now? How is it very loaded, the discussion about this kind of media in the urban space now?
Actually, now it's not that strict. The publicity, it's common for bus stoppers in some parts of the city, but the citizens really loved it and they embraced the decision. So they are really interested in keeping in this way. So, okay.
So did you experience any concerns either of censorship or self-censorship when you were on this background of a very strong opinion about urban media? What was your experience with developing all these projects in the city?
Actually, I feel like it's very experimental because we are dealing with so many people that it's hard to have that personal contact with them. So we are dealing like an experimental, everything, yeah. I'm sorry. But we are really interested in putting people together and breaking the routines and expressing this avenue that people comes to their work and come back, don't have a really social relations. So we are trying to break this routine and give it something different. Now when we are setting up the projects, there's like a lot of people curious about what's the next and talking about what we did before. So we perceive that some interest and some interest of it. And especially we are really touched, but some people that we know that don't have any culture or any education that really take pictures and stay like half an hour just looking at it. So that's something that we are really interested to make it bigger.
Because immediately when you said, oh, so we put microphones and cameras all over and tracked everything and with the skater culture, so that there might be some interesting situations there.
They don't feel really like they are being in a surveillance camera. They feel like they are they feel like they have received a gift, and there's a place for them to really do what they do, usually in the streets. So they stay in line and go every day. So we are creating a social environment for them.
So a couple of questions for you, perhaps, before we move on to the next. If the next could prepare and get to the computer. Is that you, son? My colleagues are here. Okay. Thank you. I think we will move on now to the next presentation. And if I can, which computer are we on here? So, Alain, it's actually on this computer. If you could come up here, Alain, Mongeau, please introduce yourself so I get it right, but Quartier des Spectacles?
No, from Mutec.
Mutec.
Yeah.
It's just Quartier des Spectacles was on the screen.
So I don't need this right away. So I run a festival called Mutec in Montreal, which is a festival on digital creativity and electronic music. We're part of a network which is called the ICAS, International Cities for Advanced Sound, and in Berlin our partner is the CTM Festival, which is running in parallel to Transmediale. So that gives you an example, kind of an idea of what kind of festival we are. As Susa said, we're celebrating our 15th anniversary this year. And we're also part of the Connecting Cities network, and I'll explain a bit why. We've been doing the festival as it was created in 2000, and when we celebrated our 10th anniversary about 5 years ago, we started actually expanding a little bit what we were doing in terms of the type of presentations we were doing. For the first 10 years, we were using the different venues and showcasing digital art and creation in dark rooms. And in 2009, we started actually bringing the artwork outside and start to colonize a little bit the city. And it was different initiatives, very dispersed. We would target different buildings or environments and present public art, media art works. And actually, I guess we had the premonition that things were going to evolve in Montreal. And actually, there was this development that was actually announced, which is there now. It's the development of the Quartier des Spectacles, which is actually an initiative that is financed mainly by the city, but also the different levels of government to transform the center of the city as in a way, I'd say it's kind of a modern gentrification and commodification of the downtown. And in the city was totally transformed to host the different major festivals, but they also installed quite elaborate infrastructure, which I'll present a little bit what we've been doing there. So there's at the moment an infrastructure of about 8 permanent sites for projecting on facades, and it's a permanent setup which exists for the last 3 years, and it has a certain plan for development also, like there's supposed to be more projection facades happening in the future. And I think, I was trying to relate this presentation to the topic of blackout. And for me, actually I had kind of initially a blackout on the topic also. I wasn't really sure what to say, but I was thinking about it, and it's kind of interesting. We're immersed in those realities at the moment, and sometimes we forget what it was before. And I think there's been, the festival, by presenting works and all that, and starting to, as I said, to colonize a little bit the city and to use it as a playground, was part of that process of making it common to develop this perception that we could use the city to present projects. And I think we take them a lot for granted now, but we don't necessarily need nuclear catastrophe to live a blackout, because in Montreal we have, I wouldn't say regular, but we have once in a while episodes of icy rain, which actually create blackouts. There was a major one in 2001, I think, or two, where there was a power shortage of the city for about between 4 and 7 days, depending on the neighborhoods. And even this year, there was a similar one, not necessarily in the city of Montreal, but very close so some people were without power for about 1 week. So there's a different kind of blackout also, which I think is, at the moment, as I said, there's this setup of permanent structures, infrastructure for projection. And what we're seeing, or what I think we're seeing is different phases of use of those infrastructure. And the first phase, I think it's really very, it's more like decoration. There's a lot of content that's been, well, I'm not even sure we could call it content. There's a lot of the infrastructure is used for projection of content that's pretty empty as far as I'm concerned. So it's more about the mastery of the different environments. And it's just recently that we're actually seeing some use that is a bit more meaningful. And I'll show just a short clip. I don't think this is very meaningful yet, but it's the first attempt to actually curate projects. So once every 2 years, the Quartier des Spectacles does a collection of commissions works. And this was the first one that was done 2 years ago, which we were involved with. And it gives you an example of the different facades that are being used. Sound is maybe not necessary, it's very short. So that's kind of interesting because it was produced by the tourism body. So they kind of use it to give the sense of what's happening, like a buzz, the Montreal buzz. So just quickly, for me, this is very kind of an empty, well, I mean, it's more an aesthetic use of the infrastructure. What we have in Montreal is a lab now, which is because those structures are permanent. And we're kind of witnessing a slight change that was triggered this year by a project called Megaphone, which was a project of participation where people would actually take the microphone and start regaining the use of the power of the public space. So there was people who could actually speak their minds, and it was captured, and the whole documentation of this project. And the next phase of the Parcours Numérique, which is going to be the second edition. What we saw now was the first edition 2 years ago. The next phase is going to happen this year, and actually is going to be showcased during the 15th anniversary of MUTEC, is 7 commissioned pieces, well actually 3 commissioned pieces and 4 other pieces that will result from a call for proposal. And it's on a very specific theme, which will be on Norman McLaren to celebrate his 100th anniversary. So it's going to be much more curated in a sense, very focused. And the next phase is actually a project that's going to be for us, for MUTEC. It's a project that's been operating within the more or less the Connecting Cities network. Is 4 organizations in Montreal, 2 festivals, the Quartier des Spectacles and the NFB, are teaming up with 4 partners of Connecting Cities, among which the Haus and Public Art Lab, which, and actually we're going to have the launching meeting today to start picking our brains on it, on a project called the Human Futures, which hopefully will start to induce more meaning into the use of those kind of systems.
Thank you, Alain. A hand for you as well. So I have a couple of questions, but I want to let you go first this time. Is there anything? So this structure, this infrastructure, seems incredibly embedded in a very entrenched power structure already. I mean, it was
totally
the Montreal.
And it's very luxurious also, I'd say.
So how much of that is in itself a challenge of using this meaningfully, as you say? How much work and effort actually goes to bend that situation?
Again, I'm not representing the Quartier des Spectacles, so I'm more like an outside observer. But I think there's concerns. One of the positive elements of that is they've designed certain rules of use of those façades, which is to actually exclude all publicity and all forms of commercial use of those façades. We could actually see that as a sort of act of not resistance, but of prevention, because eventually those facades might have been used by commercial interests. So that, I think, because they're an institution, they could kind of do that. And actually, the funding of those permanent sites being public funded, they could resist to the pressure of the commercial elements. Now, the other challenge, I think, is content. So they started to do partnerships for content development, and that's a bit why we're involved with them, and we're not the only players. The NFB, National Film Board, was part of this project that I mentioned, the Megaphone, and they'll be part of the commissioning of these new works for the 2nd edition of the Parcours Numérique. So, as I said, I think the key notion here is process. What I call the first wave of use was very...
Hello World?
Sorry?
Hello World?
Exactly. Was much more about getting to learn how to use the tools. And now slowly there's been cracks and attempts to try to pour in content. And it will be interesting to see where it will go, because contrary to, let's say, Istanbul, I mean, we've had our Printemps Érable. I mean, there was like huge unrest 2 years ago. Actually, the Connecting Cities partner saw it when the students went in the street, and actually the provincial government ended up being replaced because of those pressure. But it's a different kind of unrest that we could see in the Arab world, and I think that the not the perversive, the political use of those facades is not really on the agenda the same way that it could be in other places.
So another quick question, specifically about music, because Blackout, when you close your eyes, you start to listen. And these are all very visual modalities. So coming from MUTEC, what is the role of the non-visual in much of this?
No, actually, that's also an interesting question, because the first years when we were proposing projects, it was always involving sound, and they would always say no, like never, it's never going to happen, because there's residents and all that. And actually, I think they realized themselves that it didn't make sense to just use projection. So at the moment, since last year, all facades could actually have sound associated with them. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's just, it must be, a bit hurtful for, coming from an institution that's strongly attached to the audio, just seeing all this flashing before your eyes. So the blackout could also be in terms of, forgetting
it's a
that part.
misperception of the festival, because we actually have a lot of audio-visual content.
But at least you have both kinds.
Both kinds, yeah.
Okay. So let's proceed to the next. Pleased to have you here from a slightly different perspective of the artist. Can we switch the computers, please? And 2. Line 2, please. So, Paul, if you could introduce yourself, please, and I'll give you the mic.
Thank you very much. Okay, just wait for the... I'm sort of blackout at the moment. There we are. Not quite blackout yet. I'd rather not. I think it's a problem with that would be better for me that way. That's good. Okay, there we go. That looks better. Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, I've got about 10 minutes, so I want to try and sort of be quite succinct with this presentation. So I'm going to take you through quite a few slides, but I'm going to start by trying to bring together some areas of my art practice, which is around the areas of presence, in the sort of discussion of this title of this new collaborative work with my colleague Charlotte Gould, called Occupy the Screen, which I shall I'll be alluding to that particular piece of work throughout this presentation. So, but just to give you some background to myself, where I'm from, some of you may know this piece of work. I produced this piece in 1992. I'm just going to show you one image of it, just to give you some of the sort of charts, some of the history of the area of telepresence that I've worked in. This was a piece called Telematic Dreaming that linked two gallery spaces over a video conference connection with a camera above one bed that projected a live image, that sent an image of a live person lying in a bed to a projector above another bed and projected their image down on that bed live. So over video conference, these two people that were in different parts of Finland, actually, at the time, the first time, but parts of the world, could share the same space, the same bed, essentially, and cohabit and interact and experience a sense, an acute sense of touch through the shift of senses and this sort of notion of touching with your eyes. So that sort of area of practice has developed over a number of years and a number of different outputs, and one of those more recent projects resulted in this piece here called Headroom that was produced in Taipei in 2006, that brought together two remote participants who were in rather unusual spaces with their heads disappearing into little boxes above these spaces, and then unbeknown to them, they would suddenly find themselves encountered in a very, very more intimate situation in close proximity, where these two heads suddenly appear and start to suggest all sorts of different intimacies and closeness in these two spaces, but are essentially their bodies are separate in separate spaces. So I'll move through this. When I'm talking about occupying the screen, these people are really occupying the screen as well, and all the work about presence is about occupying the screen, the audience. So we can look at another way that people try to occupy the screen. To my delight, in 2007, the residents of Second Life managed to protest against the Le Pen headquarters being set up in Second Life. And there's another example of residents occupying the screen. And I say to my delight because normally, as you probably know, in these multi-user virtual spaces, people are living out their sort of utopian dreams on beaches and in bars and sunning themselves in the afterglow, perhaps. So works like this emerged from that, that started to merge First Life and Second Life together using similar sorts of telepresent technologies that resulted in other works. This particular one in the Kunsthalle project room in Vienna. Here's another example of people occupying screens. This is a very sort of pre-digital way of occupying screens. And this particular environment influenced this particular piece that occupied a screen in urban screen outside the Waterside building in Belfast, which was a very sort of a building that in many ways brought together the unification of Belfast, actually, and the peace agreement. So the work with urban screens, those sorts of work very much relate to the development of this piece, which was a collaborative piece with my colleague Charlotte Gould, who I'm working on the new work with. And this one really brought audiences together at the Glastonbury Festival in England in 2009 and merged two sort of picnic blankets. They originally were going to be in different parts of the festival, but then were just different areas around this around this open screen. And here's a short little video clip of that I can show you. I want you to really look out in many ways for the intensity that this audience engage with this screen. I mean, a Glastonbury audience, a music festival audience, are perhaps really up for it. They really want to be out on the screen and enjoying themselves and playing along with other people. But this is a very playful space. People are exploring the sense of presence that is emerging here. So these are the sorts of examples of that sort of more mass collaborative occupation of screens and the audience taking control of the outcomes. That work has also developed a little bit into other pieces. We've looked at augmented reality, bringing different kinds of movement of animations and different elements to the piece that allow the audiences to sort of more combine also with the foreground elements of the work. That was presented also between Shanghai University and Liverpool and for the Biennale in 2010. Again, bringing large groups of people together. But for me, this work has its traditions much further back, perhaps, than the piece I'm going to show you in a minute. If we look at the work of Mitchell and Kenyon, who were filmmakers from 1900, some of the very early filmmakers, they were the sort of at the same time that the Lumiere brothers were also making their films, quite often filming people leaving factories and filming these people in their urban environment and their rural environment, and showing these people these films the very same day, sometimes on occasions the following day. I've got a short little clip, and this is actually a clip for a short video clip that is by the British Film Institute and the BBC put this together, and they're the sort of the archive film footage from Mitchell and Kenyon, and there's actually a narration on this from the BFI about what's going on here and what these people are doing. It's quite a nice commentary. So I'll if I can hear the audio, actually, I'm not sure we... No, we can't hear the audio. Okay. It's not actually so important. But what it is, it's showing this bit of film is just really showing you that, don't worry now, it's fine. I'd rather not worry. So we could try that other one, all right. I think it's already... music, actually. Okay, so these are lots of film footage of people in the streets, leaving factories, as you know, these kind of things.
They would film anything they thought people would pay to see. But by filming at factory gates, as in this film, they would be guaranteed big audiences. The people they filmed would be curious enough to pay to see themselves on screen. They were shown in tents at fairgrounds and in music halls all over the Northwest. And these local films were the most popular item on the bill.
Okay, I'm going to stop that there. The reason I'm showing you that is because of the way those audiences reacted. And they react in an incredibly similar way to those audiences reacting at the Glastonbury Festival. But what they're doing is and as the narrator there said, they are literally performing in front of that camera, and they are playing to the camera to then see themselves later. These audiences were not interested in fiction films. They were interested in seeing themselves. They were interested in telepresence. And they wanted to see themselves. Okay, it was, the latency was somewhat hours later, sometimes the next day, but the very same people who were in these films went to go and see themselves in the films and with their friends, and they would obviously have great enjoyment and of seeing themselves and fascination of seeing their own bodies being portrayed later. So I talk about these fairground spaces actually as kind of Edwardian telepresence, but I think when we look at the way these fairground stands were presented in these fairgrounds, we're talking about Edwardian urban screens. These spaces were the most invited people in to the most wonderful and magical experiences. You can also compare that with the activities and the kind of audience reaction of works like Hole in Space from Kit Galloway and Sherry Rabinowitz, if we just look at a very short clip here. This is on day 3 of Hole in Space, when the audience have amassed huge crowds outside these screens in Los Angeles and New York, and are communicating for the first time over this live satellite link. So there we see them again there. So that's what I wanted to say, was really that we're looking at over 100 years of telepresence over these projects, in the ways that the audiences have responded to these opportunities of these urban screens. And that essentially is really why a lot of this work is pointing towards occupying the screen and the audience actually taking control, and us as artists providing that platform. My own work, just a little, just to sort of bring this to some conclusion about bringing this back to the blackout, the digital, the sort of the ideas of afterglow. This is my afterglow, perhaps. This is another piece of work that is using washing lines and pegs. I've made my own neural network, so if my power runs out, I can resort to this network, and this is what I do for my students. I often set up this network and let them explore the opportunity on the significance of collaborative shared content. This was in Shanghai, the group of students I worked with there. So this uses 5 nodes and washing lines and string and pegged paper, where they collaborate on drawings, and they become this collective consciousness. They become a system of as Max Ernst called, the kind of the contagion of extended consciousness. And others from the surrealists talked about this kind of exquisite corpse idea of a collaborative community working together. And that's very much what they're doing. So there you go. You can switch the power off and that piece still works. Here's another, just a very last piece I want to show you, an example of pixel blackout, and a very unfortunate situation that occurred, unfortunate, ironic situation that occurred in in Manchester recently. This is Media City in Salford, Manchester. And they have an urban screen there that, for whatever reason, it keeps constantly breaking down, and panels keep breaking down, and pixels going. So they have these pixel blackout. And they often show the BBC News on this program. And they had back in November, one of our far-right UK Independence Party politicians, Nigel Farage, was speaking about immigration at the time. And he was caught speaking on the urban screen there with the black pixel just below his nose. So, and this was tweeted around very, very quickly. So the irony of the sort of the technology failing but actually putting a rather more poignant image to Nigel Farage's face. So that's just to sort of end my final comment around this potential notion of blackout. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. And interesting to see the historical parallels and how little we change. Also interesting to see, the connection to the other, you could say, commercial drivers of creating these sort of spectacles were still back then really, in fact, driving much of the explorations, right? And the hunt for eyeballs. So what's your comment on, the still ongoing struggle between, actually having infrastructures run, having people wanting to see what you do, and then, the freedom to break out of that necessity to be shaped by what can be done. I mean, you need money to run screens, or you need to work in an urban space that's, heavily entrenched in a lot of structures.
I think we're in the United Kingdom, we've just had an unusual situation that there were a lot of screens, as you probably know, set up towards the run-up towards the Olympic Games in 2012. And at the time, during these screens were really to show the sports events, and the BBC were very much involved in this. But unfortunately, they've had to they couldn't maintain their license and control over those screens for financial reasons, and they've had to sort of hand that over to local authorities in many cases, who now. So the kind of the sort of public sort of license holders sort of control over these sort of opportunity for these screens. We've lost that to sort of more private investment. But actually, what we're left with, in many ways, in some of these screens that were put up during that time, is a network. Many of these screens are actually networked together, but no one's really used that opportunity and what that could be used for. So actually, there is it's left us with an infrastructure that now is not being used in any intelligent way, and perhaps if we know more about what happened then, perhaps it could be in that sort of moment of afterglow, we can pick it up again and find out what could be done with these things now. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
So maybe they could become part of, well, going back to the neural network, it's part of more bottom-up run use and connecting these places now that they're out of this very strong connection to the commercial sort of and license setup. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're saying? That it's now actually becoming more open for such appropriations?
It could. I mean, I think all these screens have the potential to do all this work fairly. The infrastructure is pretty much there to do all this. In places we need a bit of tweaking, but essentially the infrastructure is there. Most of these screens quite often come with cameras positioned above them, so it's very easy to capture audiences and capture interaction with the screen. So I think in many cases we often find the infrastructure is built in, but it's just laying dormant until we can use it, I think.
Yeah, it's a fabulous sort of network relic that's sitting there in the wake of the crush, the financial crush.
Yeah.
Okay. Any specific questions here before we move on to the next? In fact, from fact in Liverpool, where they have. Oh, sorry. Oh, it's you again, son. Yeah. Could you please introduce yourself? Who are you and why are you here?
Why I'm here? Okay. My name is Søren Poll. I'm from Aarhus University, and thanks for your lecture. I found it interesting, really interesting. But also, I'm also curious about sort of the politics of putting people up there, whereas you know, what your thoughts would be on this, you know, because everybody just likes to see themselves on screens, but should we use public space for, you know, me on the screen, or isn't there some kind of also necessity for the public, or, you know, to show a more collective picture or a mass or something? Of course, this, you know, this goes way back in history, as you talk about it, and you know, I can't help thinking of this Walter Benjamin quote where, you know, he talks about that fascism sees its salvation in giving these masses not their right, but instead a chance to express themselves. So, you know, of course, this is a very sort of.
I think I can try and answer that in a way that, I think my role as an artist, I still have a role to play. Well, I don't want to. The creative part for me is finding out how much agency to give up, in a sense, how much I can give over to the audience to take control and lead that explore that narrative, but they explore it within a context that I'm quite often setting up. I can go back to the very original piece of work with the bed. The piece of work would be very different if I projected it on the floor. So the bed sets up a very complex situation, and in many times in that installation, people would just stand and look at it. They wouldn't even dare go on it. They would just look at the bed. And I actually think that's also enough. I don't mind, because the potential is there. But what I'm trying to say is that as an artist, I think my role is to provide the context, and I think that's becoming increasingly more so for contemporary artists today, who are engaging in these ways, that they actually are providing the context for things to happen. And the more sophisticated and rich experiences we can try and induce, the more greater outcomes we could have, and the more I guess handing back more opportunity to the audience, and more ownership over the spaces. So Hole in Space as a piece of work for me is not a simple video conference link. It is a link between a very important part of Los Angeles to a very interesting equivalent sort of social part of New York, and it is in confronting cultural differences, and in some cases humor and jokes, and families who at the time in the 1980s were unable to get to see each other for sometimes for 10 years or more. So when I think the artists Kit Galloway and Sherry Rinovitz, when they did that piece, they took all those things into consideration. They weren't just arrived at in the same way that some of our other kinds of more predominant uses of these screens might arrive at them, which is to generate more revenue.
Thank you. Mike Stubbs from FACT.
Can we just check that we've got sound on this computer, please? There's a mini jack plugged in, but make sure it's turned up. It will be important at the end of this presentation. I'm feeling a bit faint, excuse me. I don't know if it's the air in here or what. Let's have some more water if I could, thank you. I've kind of become passionately involved in a specific project recently, and that's working very closely with an artist called Krzysztof Fediczko. And that's primarily what I'm going to speak about today. I'm kind of on a mission. But to start, so I've kind of titled this Unwar Me, and that's actually borrowing or rephrasing one of Krzysztof's expressions. But we start with give peace a chance. And so these are some of my friends from Liverpool. On the far right, he's actually from Tokyo. This is Abe Shibuya, he set up the first video synthesizer in the Sony lab. Next to Namjoon Paik, he's my hero, a member of Fluxus. With Yoko Ono, of course, did the bed in with John and stole John from Liverpool. Hi, Matt. This is about a mile from my house, and this is taken 6 months ago. And if you come to Liverpool, it's still like this. However, of course, 25 years ago, Tate Liverpool opened as part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site development. As a major redevelopment of a port city that had been the third richest city in the UK, making its income from trading sugar and slaves. On the back of that project, using European Regional Development Fund Objective 1 money, the only city in the UK to receive it, FACT was built. This photograph was taken the day it opened, so this is like the architect's photo before it was tainted by people. And now we have 350,000 visitors a year, and it's busy. Those regenerations then led to us winning the European Capital of Culture, and of course Aarhus in 2017 will take on the baton. This is Real Deluxe from Nantes, major sort of spectacle event. One of the terms that Christophe uses is architainment, and he also is very much involved in inventing projection mapping, and we'll come to him in a minute. This dude is Michael Heseltine, who was a Tory politician who actually recognised that Liverpool was being disinvested in. And he was behind, actually, he contested someone we don't like very much, Margaret Thatcher. Prepare yourself, you'll see a picture in a minute. But he basically contested the fact that the north of England was being disinvested in. So it started to discuss this notion of the centre and the regions. And of course, again, Toxteth, very close to that turned-up house you saw. Toxteth riots, 1983, was kind of characterised as being a racial riot. It wasn't. It was about poverty and social conditions. And then we started thinking about a notion of ideology or militancy. And again, I think this kind of crosses over with my own personal attachment to the project by Christophe and his own motivation. He's highly politicised. So here we see Thatcher. In 1985, Christophe made a projection work. It was the first public projection work I'd ever seen in my life. It was using, I have to do it with one hand because I'm holding a microphone, but it's basically like a small iPad-shaped slide, a big slide projection, not video, pre-video projection. He projected these images. On your left, you've got a cruise missile, which I think you actually had some located here in Germany. We had some in England. So they were USAF missiles based pre-Cold War. This is before 1989, before the fall of the Berlin Wall, before Tiananmen Square, and before the release of Nelson Mandela. On the right, we have this image of the tank tracks on the plinth to one of the four lions in Trafalgar Square. So this is the kind of the heart of British imperialism and colonial power. And he did that as an intervention to try and change the understanding of this public space. And it had a deep significance on me personally as an artist, and influenced my interest in large-scale projection work, etc. Now, what happened that night is that Margaret Thatcher, who I hated and still do, gave £7 million of taxpayers' money to P.K. Botha, the president of South Africa, in support of the apartheid government. Yeah, and it was a big slap in the face to the anti-apartheid movement, of which I was a part. There was a group called Artists Against Apartheid, and we did various fundraising events and made art and all that kind of stuff. So what did he do? He stayed up all night and he made these slides. And I realised that these images are more sensitive in this place than some places, but here are the images. So the South African embassy is perpendicular to the National Gallery in Trafalgar Square. He basically produced this image of a swastika and projected it onto the South African embassy. The image stayed up for 2 hours. and then it was closed down. There was a lot of discussion in the press about the legality of the material of light. There was a big, big blow-up between the South African embassy and the UK government. And perhaps we'd like to think that this changed the consequence of Nelson Mandela's release, perhaps. Slight change. So Tenant Spin, originally set up by Superflex from Copenhagen, is the oldest community TV station in the UK. So FACT has got a long, long history and interest in working in collaborative programs and also thinking about storytelling and people's stories, working across communities. So these are 12-year-old images. Christoph's work in Tuana, working with abused women. And now we move to War Veteran Vehicle, a project we produced in Liverpool. This was also produced in Denver and Warsaw in Poland. Basically, he works over a period of time with returning soldiers, in this instance from Iraq, Bosnia, and Afghanistan. They sourced this ex-Iraqi Land Rover, bought it. Where the gun turret would have been is then replaced by a projector. They tell their stories, so this is an oral history project, and those stories are then converted into graphic texts and then projected onto significant sites. So here we've got Christoph with some of the soldiers and one of their wives. So this whole notion of trauma is central to his practice. This is just one shot of some fairly powerful stories that are then projected across the city. And again, as we've heard, this is very much about process, as Alain is saying. It's probably no coincidence that FACT have produced a number of artists' work who've addressed their own issues within their own countries about war. And this has sort of become an increasing interest. So Pitchpong Verisakal from northern Thailand produced Primitive. Ahmed Bassioni, deceased. This is from Egypt. Jemima Wyman from Australia. And recently Mark Boulos from the States. And this is fed into a program called Healthy Spaces. So we're doing a number of projects working with different aspects of healthcare, mental health, children's palliative care units, etc., etc. But on the back of Christoph's first project, we raised 3 years funding through the Paul Hamlin Foundation, and now work with 25 returning soldiers 3 days a week at FACT, which is it's extremely rewarding and challenging work because they're being shown different ways of living and different forms of healthcare, but they're also being trained how to use media production for themselves. So we're hoping that by the end of the 3 years, they'll be artists in some form or other. And we see some pictures of some of these guys. The words that I've written across the top are borrowed really from Christoph's narrative. Christoph is completely committed to this notion of unwar. And whereas, of course, we commemorate, especially in the first year of the First World War, 1418, which is a kind of big thing across Europe right now. We're kind of commemorating war, the First World War, and it's kind of dressed up as being commemorating the lives of people who lost their lives. Christoph's position, of course, is that actually what we're doing is we're celebrating war. So that he's very, very interested in working with war memorials, and this is something that we're doing at the moment. He also talks about the kind of notion of proactive peace. So he doesn't believe peace is a binary of war. He believes in this notion of unwar, and that we actually need to remove the notion of war from our psyches. Now, this isn't a sort of utopian idea of abolishing war, though he does talk about the abolishment of war, and has got a plan to set up an International Institute of Unwar and converting the Arc de Triomphe in Paris into an unwar memorial. Paris don't want to do it. And then what I thought I'd do is I'm now involved in producing a retrospective of his work, and I'm interested to talk to institutions that are interested to co-produce. And I'm also involved in helping to produce a film documenting his practice. He's now 70. He was born in Warsaw in Poland. He was the sole survivor of his family. So now we're going to just see an extract of documentation. This is like a sample taken from the Lincoln Memorial in Union Square, New York, which is where he lives. He's lived in New York for the last 25 years. Now, with a longer presentation, we could talk. It's really interesting to see some of the other presentations, but his practice, he's one of the first experimenters of telepresence, working with virtual technology, so on and so forth. And he continually sort of refers to this idea of speaking through people. So let's see if this film will play. And we should have some audio. It's okay, thanks.
Go into the Marines is the first line of attack, and you're going to die, pretty much. So we're sitting in the kitchen, and we're talking, and I'm like, okay, you're going to die. And he just looked at me and gave me a look like any teenage kid. I mean, because he was, Nicholas was like around 18 and a half. So any teenage kids, you just blowing hot air and stuff like that. So we got into a very intense argument. He's like, well, then why would you tell me? I would think that you would understand why I'm joining the Marine Corps, because you were a Marine. And I stopped for a minute, because it's true, I wasn't a Marine. So why am I sitting here telling him? I said, because we're at war, you idiot. You freaking idiot. We're at war right now. If you go, you're going to die. God, please do me a favor and just...
They are kind of wearing this Lincoln as if it was a mask or a costume, something that we know from Greek theater or Chinese theater. A very important vehicle to be able to tell difficult truths or difficult narratives.
I wanted to have the machine gun and just fire, but I just had that feeling, like being back there and just be, I don't know, the Marine and destroy and kill stuff.
Did you see my country at war like this? When are we coming back? And what city are we going to? War's obsolete. We all know that. When I got back, I bumped into one of my Marine buddies. He followed me. You don't have to be a participant. And he asked me how I was doing with all the problems that I had been having. Why all the economy's a mess. And I looked at him with a smile on my face, and I said, I can honestly say that the work in Iraq what goes around comes around has helped me heal a little bit. Not superstitious man, but I'm destroying a nation. Next time you go back, and get away with it. No matter what it costs you, must have killed. I want to go with you. Men and women, human beings. There are some things I did in Iraq that I'm not very proud of. I hope. And I want to heal too.
I suppose when a war starts, there's a certain drumbeat within what society says and what it does to get you to go, I imagine. And suddenly that drum beat just kind of didn't make sense anymore. It didn't sound like a beat anymore. It just sounded like noise. And that's when I suppose I started to doubt the reasons for that war.
This is the reason, of course, why I work on those projects. To hear this from those people themselves. To create conditions so they can testify to the history of the way they became homeless, or all of the concrete situations that are part of their post-traumatic condition.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Mike. I think actually let's proceed in the way of the do-it-yourself spirit. I mean, if we can't use the infrastructures that the power that be provide for us, we can make our own. So please welcome Yves here from Imal in Brussels. and if we can have computer number something on, because this is in fact your approach pretty much to number 3. Screen number 3. Thank you.
Hello. So I'm Yves Bernard from IMAL in Brussels. IMAL is it's both an art center with a gallery space, but also a media lab, and since 2012 a fab lab. And of course we have many artists coming in residency, and we have more and more activities involving the local citizens, the public, so in a way it becomes a hub between art, science and social innovation. Brussels is a particular city because it's at the same time quite well known in the center of Europe, capital of Europe, everything, but it's a small city. It's a little more than 1 million inhabitants. And for instance, we don't have any permanent media facade infrastructure. There was only one, which was the Dexia building. You remember Dexia? This huge bank which was completely dismantled after the financial crisis in 2008. So indeed, after 2008, the media facade was simply shut off. Dexia would never dare to switch it on again, because that's not their core business to do, to display pictures on a building. And what we did, also before this crisis, we already negotiated with Dexia how we could do something with their media facade. And you see that it's so complicated to discuss with this kind of huge corporate, because there are so many trade-off. What kind of content is it going to be correct, politically correct, and so on and so on. So what we did indeed for the Media Facade Festival in 2010, we decided to do our own media facade, to build it by ourselves. So IMAL is, yes, it's this kind of place where we try to make people aware of their dependencies with technology, where technology comes from, that maybe they should be more active in the way this technology is elaborated and how they can repurpose existing technology and maybe develop their own tools and practice. So if I go into this blackout topic, well, you could say we are not really a sect of the post-apocalypse world. We are not waiting for the blackout. We are not preparing that. But you could say that now the do-it-yourself is more like a political approach, an attitude. But if there is indeed a real blackout, the do-it-yourself will be the only way to go. So in a way, if there is really something happening, people will have to do things by themselves. The whole infrastructure will probably be off, and the only way to go will be by your own knowledge and your own practice. So about what we are going to do in Connecting Cities this year, it's really to go to this do-it-yourself practice and this mobile infrastructure, this mobile projection. So what we will do mainly, it's a masterclass which will happen somewhere in June, where we will make a call for that, which probably will happen around the end of April, May, and we will select a project to produce in a very intensive week with different artist mentors to help you, and where the artist will be able to use the Fab Lab, the Media Lab, every tools that we have, and at the end, we will present the project in the urban space around Imal. Then there will be, the idea is that we try to produce more experimental project with mobile technology and do-it-yourself devices, and that maybe this project would then circulate in the other cities later on in the autumn and maybe in 2015. Voilà. Thanks.
Thank you, Yves. Sorry, we really need to stop on time, but I just want to ask you something, because you have a lot of experience, not just from the latest Fab Lab craze, but during a lot of years of trying actually to establish this organization around doing it, not just one person or one organization doing stuff, but actually you talked about social innovation, bringing this to a larger audience and actually creating what you could maybe call a culture of this. So how do you see the relationship between the necessity, maybe you said that, about do-it-yourself knowledge and practices, and urban media? So you said nobody needs to display anything on a building. That's not core business. So why is it necessary, this connection?
Well, I think that urban media should be more like street art, or like graffiti art. That is where any individual can express himself quite easily.
So illegal?
Well, maybe sometimes it will. You need that it's illegal sometimes, but. Indeed, the problem with all this huge media facade infrastructure, it's who's controlling them and what kind of content you can put on them. I think that we have the possibility now with all this technology maybe to be able to become citizens, to express directly in the urban space. And we want to stimulate that.
So could you say that it's an underdeveloped sort of area, that not enough people know how to use urban space in a more powerful, digital, connected way?
Well, it's an ongoing exploration and effort. I don't say that it's underdeveloped. It's just starting in the last 5 years. You see so much development of all this mobile technology, and now there is an opportunity to use them and to repurpose them to do something else. That's why they were maybe down. So it's not underdeveloped. It's just starting, and we have to develop with them.
Okay. Thank you. I think I'll take this opportunity to thank you all again for coming and for staying. And I would actually urge you to come up and talk to the people that you've seen here. We don't have time for any more questions. So, highly censored debate. But I think now you know how to get involved with people like these. I think the Connecting Cities Network is actually a platform for, well, you could say connecting cities, but how do you connect cities? You make sure that people connect the cities, right? So please see these presentations as concerns, yes, but also invitations to get connected. And please connect your cities. I suspect many of you are actually in many cities. So thank you, Susa, for organizing this. Thank you for joining the panel. And first of all, thank you for coming, and see you around.